4 boats in one day are a lot of boats. Hi, I'm Kate. I study classical mythology, classical archaeology, classical reception, and Percy Jackson. Today is my book to TV show review of episode 3 and 4 of the Percy Jackson TV show on Disney+. I apologize for the delay, but it is the holidays, my only few weeks off from school for a while, and I'm tired. But luckily, episode 3 and 4, while being really fantastic episodes, were not the most full episodes in the world, so I think we can get through with this pretty quick. Okay, starting with episode 3. So episode 3 starts with the Clarice prophecy. I like that they do not give us the last line of the prophecy. I also like that despite some interesting choices in episode 2, they decided to keep the prophecy the same and keep the part where Clarice goes home alone, and so with that knowledge, she decides not to bring anyone on the quest. It also means that it was good that Annabeth didn't just wait for Clarice and went with Percy, because otherwise she would not have gotten to go. So, I think that's a cool change. Continuing on with Clarice a little bit, I want to say that the scene between Clarice and Ares was perfect. It was exactly how I would have imagined the conversation was after we found out that this happened in the background in the actual book. But even better. I loved how Ares was speaking to all of the generals and putting down Clarice while, trying to give off the idea of a good dad. He's pretending, but he's failing miserably. And instead he's calling her a little girl, and there's, no way she'll be able to lead you, but you're going to follow her anyway. That was really good. It was a little nuanced, but also comedic, and I was happy about that because I have been having the problem with this show that sometimes it goes too heavy on the seriousness and misses the comedy, and this part's definitely got the comedy well. Though I would have liked a scene later in episode 4 where we saw this whole situation from a bit more serious of a point of view, because there's the conversation with Ares and Clarice in the boat in the book, where he's a lot harder on her and makes it incredibly clear what it would mean if she didn't complete this quest. I just want to get everything based on Clarice in this episode out of the way, so I'm going to skip ahead to Clarice's speech on the ship. I thought that this speech was great, but what I like even better is how it affects episode 4. And so the things that she says have consequences. How she's like, they will make it into Elysium Fields. And all of those things. She's making big promises that she can't keep. And I'm happy that they made this decision to have the reason why Clarice makes these choices be because she made a promise. And while Clarice can be annoying, at least to Percy, and make some really bad decisions sometimes, as is obvious in the books, this gives her a good reason why she makes some of those bad decisions later on, in episode 4 especially. I also like that it shows that she is new to leading a quest, leading a group of soldiers outside of the camp, but she is able to figure out how to make everyone, she's able to convince people, manipulate people maybe, But Clarice is able to communicate eventually with the sailors, even though it is hard at first. And I like that we are seeing these complexities in Clarice's character, which we would not usually see in a Percy Jackson book, since the book is from Percy's point of view, and he does not see a lot of this stuff. Moving to the Princess Andromeda. So one of the through lines of this episode is the prophecy, right? And how Annabeth knows most of the prophecy, and Percy knows that she knows this information, or that she knows something, right? And they're trying to have communication without communicating, and, you know, trying to find the balance, and then Luke gets there in the middle and messes with things. I don't know what exactly to say here, except that it worked. I like how Percy is, once he realizes that there is information he shouldn't know, he's like, okay, don't tell me. Don't tell me. Point me in the right direction, but don't tell me. And then when Luke is like, you don't know? And Percy's like, don't tell me. And Luke's like, oh, you scared? That is just, it was really fun. I like how, like, they're able to make this a nice through line of this episode, and it all comes together. One thing that I thought was a little weird is that Percy and Kronos kind of have a Harry and Voldemort relationship in this episode. It's like he can hear him speaking, and he's getting these ideas in his head from Kronos. I think the only thing that makes that okay for me, I mean, I guess a little bit of that was in the books, but it wasn't as obvious, or wasn't as focused on, right? I think the thing that makes it okay, and not like they're just trying to rip off Harry Potter, is that it's also happening to Luke. It happened to Ares, right, in the last season. They didn't show it in this way, but that's what we can understand, right? That's what happened to Ares. Like, this whispering thing is something that we do see throughout the books. It's just the way that they're highlighting it in this episode focuses on Percy's relationship with Kronos, right? And that is just so giving Harry Voldemort vibes. And I don't want them to get, like, you know, I don't want the writers to get yelled at by fans for trying to do Harry Potter when they should be doing Percy Jackson. But I guess since it is different enough, right? It's not just a Percy and Kronos thing. He's just focusing on Percy right now. But at the same time, it does feel a little bit too Harry Potter. That's all I can really say, I guess. But yeah, I did really like this episode. I was so excited about how awesome the Andromeda looked. It was my dream come true. I talked about this in the last review when we only saw it in the distance, but it not being a little tiny yacht and being a massive cruise ship, like, finally. While there were some funny moments on the yacht in the Sea of Monsters movie, this is definitely my preference. It gave off exactly how I would have imagined it in the books, down to, like, the monsters eating breakfast with the humans. The humans did seem a little less weird in this, which I think is fine. It's just a different way of playing it. But in the book, all the humans are like, we are having the best time. And here, they're, like, acting normal. They just really don't notice the monsters. That's a little bit of a difference, and I think they could have done it the way it's done in the books, and that would have been fun. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the choice they made here. But something I do want to talk about is the new character, Allison. She seems really fun. Like, really cool as a new villain character. But I am wondering where is she going? You know, since she doesn't exist in the books, is she going to really add to the story? Is she gonna die in this season, or is she going to continue on and become a larger character? Did they just need a random character to play a evil demigod on the boat, and so they made a new character? The other thing is that that role could have been played by Chris Rodriguez, right? But they've decided to leave him on campus. Well, not campus, at camp. So my question is, since he didn't go on the quest with Clarice, like he thought he was going to, what is he going to do in this season? Because they're hinting at him doing something, right? They've lingered on him. So we know that they're not just going to ignore him this season and bring him into a later season. He is mildly focused upon. So my question is he gonna try to double cross Clarice when she makes it back to camp? Did he also sneak out of camp and pretended he was going with Clarice, and then he made his way to Luke? What is gonna happen there? I am definitely wondering, what are the future plans with Allison and Chris? But I don't have any worries about the characters yet. But yeah, I think Allison is cool. I like how she was introduced as like the cool, graduated demigod who's hanging out in the world and hanging out on cruise ships, but she's also secretly evil. I also liked how Percy was able to use his knowledge from Grover to figure out that she's evil. And so it was one of those situations where Annabeth would have fallen for this trick, but Percy actually had the information this time. And I always enjoy when Percy gets to show that he's smart and can make solid connections. One last thing I want to focus on for this episode is Tyson's role in the episode. For the most part, he's just playing his regular, like, comedic character. But one thing that really was highlighted for me was his relationship to Luke's posse, right? I thought it was really interesting that instead of in the book, where Tyson is treated like he's worth nothing, he's just a big oaf, here Luke respects him. He treats Tyson well. Now, is he treating Tyson well to try to get Percy on his side? Yes. But this is a totally different tactic from the books, right? So I thought that was really interesting. Also, the bomb was awesome. I love it showed that Tyson was thinking multiple steps ahead of everyone else, and that even though he comes off as like a stupid character sometimes to the other characters, he's not. He saw what was going on, he thought of a solution, he manipulated the characters around him into thinking that he was on their side, and then he blew them up. But what made it even better was that Tyson did regret it. So it wasn't like he was just like, Percy, friend, monsters, not friend. It was like, Percy, friend, but they were nice. And I feel bad that I had to kill them. And so I was really happy with this nuance in the character of Tyson. And I'm happy that the changes this season seem to make the characters stronger and more interesting, and not like less of themselves, you know? I think that every choice made in this episode was really good. Now, moving on to episode 4. So this is another episode that does a lot with like a little. The episode really only has 2 settings. On the shore and the nearby sewers, where Annabeth goes, and the ship, Clarice's ship. So let's focus first on the shore and the sewers. I'm going to mostly focus on the sewers for a moment. First of all, I was very happy that we got a Monster Donuts, like, little hint. Because I did not think that we were ever going to get the Monster Donuts Hydra. But I am happy that they didn't just forget about the Hydra and they gave us a little something to remember him by. It was a really cute cereal box, but I will say I would have preferred donuts, but like donuts are not the smartest food to keep in a emergency like vent for things that demigods are gonna need at any moment. So I guess cereal lasts longer when it's not opened than donuts do. So I'll go with it. Also, we live in the day and age where Oreos has cereal and Sour Patch Kids have cereal. So maybe Monster Donuts is a donut brand that has its own cereal. So that's fine. I'm not going to overthink it. It's a cereal box. Next, I'm going to focus on the flashbacks real quick. I want to just get them all out of the way together. So we start our flashbacks in the same sewer where Annabeth as a child was brought by Luke and Thalia in the TV show. And Luke gives the little bracelet to Annabeth for her to hold on to keep her safe and make it so she's able to more easily hide from monsters. But in truth, he just wants her to feel better. It's just a bracelet as far as Annabeth knows later on. I've never seen the bracelet before, so that's what I would assume. But maybe it is a magical artifact that we just don't know about. I don't know. I'm not gonna assume. And okay, so then Thalia comes in and she's like, we gotta go. And then they meet Grover. So then we get Grover trying to convince them to go to Camp Half-Blood. I thought it was really interesting that Grover and Thalia do not want to go to Camp Half-Blood. They do not want to go. And they do not think it's the best option for Annabeth at the time. That was definitely a change. I don't think it was like a strong change. I think Luke in the book was always questioning whether the camp was a good idea or not, and he definitely thinks it's a bad idea years later on. But this like strong, definitely not gonna go, I feel like that's definitely a bit of a change at least. And then they have a new reason for why the Cyclops catch them, right? It's the bracelet. Annabeth thinks that she lost the bracelet somewhere on the way there, so she starts walking back the way they came so that she can find this super important bracelet that's actually just a piece of plastic as far as she knows now. And then the Cyclops find her, and Luke and Thalia save her, and then they decide that maybe camp is the best option for her. That's definitely different from the book, and I think I like it, because in the book, Annabeth just is like, well, we got stuck by these Cyclopses, and they are really scary, and that was what caused us to fall behind, and then the monsters caught up to us. And like, maybe, but I mean, it might not have made that much of a difference, you know, when the monsters show up. They don't travel the same way humans do. They could have still shown up at that same time, right? Whereas in the TV show, Annabeth explains that the closer they got to camp, the more monsters showed up. So by bringing her to camp, Luke and Thalia endangered themselves, and that's why she blames herself for Talia's death. And I like that. I think it's a bit stronger. Also, the fact that she's only with them for 2 months instead of 6 months does explain why she's now questioning how well she knew Thalia, right? She knew them for a very short time, and in that time, they were really protective of her, so they might not have told her certain things. So, and she knows Thalia didn't want to go to the camp in this version, so it makes sense why she doesn't know what side of this upcoming war Thalia would be on. I think all of this flashback stuff is really great. But do you know what's even better? I'm going to bring this up now, even though it's skipping forward a little bit, but the fact that Annabeth decides to get rid of the bracelet when she finds it again, and then Rainbow keeps bringing it back. I was just really happy because I was worried we weren't getting Rainbow this season. I'd seen the hippocampi in, like, the background at the end of the episodes, but the hippocampi show up earlier in the books. They show up as their transportation to the Andromeda. So I was trying to figure out how would they bring them in. And having Rainbow following the ship and Tyson having already befriended Rainbow while everyone else was busy doing, like, the other stuff, I really like that. Especially because it tracks with Tyson in the books where he knows that Rainbow has been following them the whole time. Also, it gives us an excuse for how Tyson survives the shipwreck at the end of the episode. Because that Rainbow saves him canonically in the book, but it would have been hard to believe that this random hippocampi, like, had traveled through these monstrous waves to save a Cyclops that it hadn't met yet. So having this cute little interaction where the hippocampi is playing fetch with Annabeth's bracelet was really great. And it also shows that there might be something more important about the bracelet than Annabeth thinks, whether it is magical or emotional. But moving backwards a sec, back to the shoreline, I liked how they changed the scene from the books to the TV show. Because in the books, of course, it is the Hydra scene, which, while I would love to see a live-action Hydra in the book series and see how it's different from the movie, I do think it's kind of a throwaway gag, right? So in a TV show where they only have so much money, it was the right choice to get rid of it. Also, in this scene, Clarice has to make the decision to work with Percy and Annabeth. Instead of in the book where they just kind of take over, right? Like, she makes bad decisions on the ship, she ignores everything that they think, and then they get into the shipwreck. Here, she was just gonna leave them there, right? She just needed the coordinates, but by the end of the scene, she's made the decision to work with them, which is definitely very different from Clarice in the books, but I think it is a good difference, because this version of Clarice, while she is difficult at times, she's not impossible to understand, right? And this version of Clarice wouldn't let her pride stop her from making the right decision to finish her quest. Not all the time. And this is a good example of her being able to make the right decision even when she really doesn't want to. Oh, plus, this is one of those moments where Annabeth shows her wisdom in a way that actually tracks for me with her in the books. Like, her killing the 3 ghosts that did the jobs of Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. Perfect. That is exactly what Annabeth from the books would have done in that situation. And so I was really happy that was the type of wisdom they showed here, because I get a little annoyed when Annabeth just knows everything in scenes where, she just knew the exact poison that poisoned Annabeth's tree just by smelling it. Like, that's not wisdom, that's knowledge. And I know that they're connected, but they're not the same thing. Knowledge is having the information. Wisdom is knowing what to do with it. Here, Annabeth had the information that these 3 ghosts were in their way because they had the same skill set. She used that information. She killed them. Perfect. I don't think Clarice liked that very much, but that was exactly what Annabeth should have done in that scene. I will say it does also show the difference between Annabeth and Clarice when it comes to the ghosts. Annabeth is more than okay with getting rid of 3 ghosts so that they can get what they need, right? Where Clarice is unwilling later on to sacrifice 6 ghosts so that they can all get through, and ends up sacrificing all the ghosts. So that's a bit of a difference in character, right? Like, Annabeth is like, you need to sacrifice 6 ghosts, sacrifice 6 ghosts. And Clarice is like, but I promised them that they'd get Elysium, and they're not going to get Elysium if they get sacrificed here. If they get taken by Scylla, they're not going to have the opportunity to make it to Elysium. And so I do think that's interesting that Annabeth is so focused on what is the smartest choice to make that she didn't even think twice about whether it was the right choice to make. Continuing on with Clarice, I wanted to talk about Clarice's conversation with Percy. I thought that was a very good conversation for the two of them. I like how instead of in the books where Clarice just ignores Percy and just thinks that she's always making the right decision whether she is or not, she listens to Percy and Annabeth and takes their knowledge into consideration, even if she ends up making the wrong decisions after all. But she's still listening to them. And I like how that scene shows that she does respect Percy's opinions. She asks for his thoughts. She tells him the prophecy without him having to push her too hard. Like, he has to kind of force it out of her in the book. And at the end of the book, too. Here, she just tells him. And she asks him, how did you survive your own quest? And it helps us remember that Clarice, while she's strong and hardworking and brutal, she's still a kid, and this is her first quest. And it's just a good scene. And I like how Percy is being pretty serious about the scene, but at the same time, he is making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That feels very Percy. Like, he's taking it seriously, but he's also not, like, so focused on it and, like, his connection to Clarice that, like, you know, he won't make the sandwich he came in there for. It was also a good, like, acting choice because it meant that he had something to do with his hands. It kept the scene a bit more interesting. If we just keep having scenes of 2 actors looking right at each other and just talking, that's not going to be interesting. But having Percy decide to make the sandwich during the scene kept the conversation more interesting and dynamic. And it just was very in character. That's so something that Percy would do. Also, I know that the internet has already figured this out, but the Percy and Annabeth scenes in this episode are just so cute. Where Annabeth is questioning how they can possibly get through this quest. And Percy is saying that she's special. And she's like, how do you know? And he's like, I've known since the second day I met you. Or like 2 days in. Oh my gosh. It's just so cute. They're doing such a good job at making them just have the strongest chemistry. Like, oh my gosh. I'm very excited about this. Especially because the siren scene is coming up soon. And they need to have this type of chemistry before the siren scene, don't they? Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is the finale, where their ship gets destroyed. One thing I wanted to bring up, which I only noticed after I reread the last chapter of this section of the book, because I was a bit behind when I watched the episode. But this scene is almost an exact opposite to the scene in the book. And yet it works just as well. So, in the book, Clarice decides that she is going to go straight at Charybdis and shoot it up. And then, halfway through, Percy realizes that they're not going to survive, so he pulls the ship towards Scylla, and that saves the ship, but that causes Scylla to start pulling them up, and they pull up Percy with them because Percy is on the top of the ship because the engine is on fire, and if he goes down there, he's gonna die. So, and that engine thing happens on its own just because they're in deep water, right? And Percy makes the decision not to take out the winds because he doesn't think that is a good idea, and he realizes immediately that he can't control the water. So, that's very different. It's completely opposite from what happens in the TV show, where Clarice decides that she's going to sacrifice her men, put about 4 men in. She just can't do it. She just feels so guilty about it. So she decides instead, if they're going to die, they're going to die fighting. So she turns the ship towards Charybdis instead of away from Charybdis and then starts shooting at it. Percy and Annabeth think it's a genius idea to get the winds out. And so Annabeth goes for them, but then she falls off the ship. And so then the winds fall into the engine room. Percy thinks that he can totally control the Charybdis, which is like so not going to happen. This is book 2, Percy, not book 5, Percy. He's not ready for this. Book 4 and 5, Percy could handle this. Book 2 is still a baby. I don't care if the actor has went through puberty. He's a baby. He cannot control that ship yet. And then, of course, with the winds falling into the engine, that causes the entire ship to explode. Even though Tyson had been managing to keep the engine from dying. That is just completely backwards, right? Everything is completely backwards. And yet it works. I don't know how it works to just do everything the exact opposite of the way that happened in the book. But it just did. And I was very impressed by that. I thought that was so funny. And I just wanted to mention that. Also, I am very sad that Charybdis does not have braces. I said it. How dare Charybdis not have braces? Like, I know that the show takes this more seriously than the book, but the braces were iconic. I need someone to make Charybdis arts with the braces because I need an image of it, and I always wanted to get an image from a live adaptation. But instead, neither the movie or the TV show had the guts to give me braced up Charybdis. So, like, whatever. I guess I'll just move on. She did look really cool, though. I like how she became a literal whirlwind up in the sky. I also would have liked a pine tree, though, because the pine tree mentioned in the book is also in the Odyssey. And I've always just thought it was really funny. There's a pine tree in the middle of a whirlwind. But she looked awesome. And so did what we saw of Scylla. I really liked how we didn't get to see all of Scylla, but we just got to see her arms. Well, I do think it would have been cool, though, if we got the scene where Percy almost makes it all the way up to Scylla, and then he injures her, making him fall into, the whirlwind. That would have been amazing. But I do like what we got, with just, the, not the intimidation, the anticipation. It was pretty great. And overall, a very dramatic ending to the episode, which I really liked. I will say that both of these episodes, 3 and 4, they really stretched out the content that they had. You know, adding flashbacks here, adding new characters there, adding all the scenes of Clarice before she meets up with Percy and Annabeth. So they're really stretching the content of these, 4 chapters. But I think they did a good job, and I'm happy that I got to talk about it with you guys. So I still haven't figured out a new outro, so I guess we're just going to keep it simple, but I will see you later.